Welcome on the bold topics, and I am Anandamayi Deji with you. Today we are talking about Mahadevi Verma. Mahadevi Verma is a name in Hindi literature who has been called a modern Meera. The poet Nirala called Mahadevi Verma the Saraswati of the vast temple of Hindi literature, the embodiment of Sarda and the embrace of literature. Her name is mentioned alongside the four major pillars of the Chayanand era: Sumitra Nandan Pant, Jayasankar Prasad and Surikant Tripathi Nirala. She nurtured Khari Boli Hindi with sweetness and tenderness, opening the door to the expression of human emotion. She gave the pain of separation the glory of a lamp's flame. Mahadevi Verma has born after several generations in her family. No girl had been born in her family for 200 years. It is believed that her birth was due to Durga Puja. Mahadevi Verma gave Gandhiji a silver ball which she had won in a competition for the country's independence movement. She used to speak at poetry conference during the Satyagraha movement and always won first prize. Born in Farrukhabad district of Uttar Pradesh, Mahadevi Verma was married in her childhood, after which she continued her studies while living with her father. Her husband was also studying at the time, but Mahadevi Verma lived her life alone. She had no attachment to worldly affairs. She remained lost in her own world of feelings and thoughts. She was deeply influenced by Buddhism and herself wanted to become a Buddhist nun. Mahadevi Verma was married to Dr. Swarup Narayan Verma in Indore in 1940 at the age of 9. She lived with her parents because her husband was studying in Lucknow. The generosity, compassion, purity, modern intellect, seriousness and simplicity of a Hindustani woman were all embodied in Mahadevi Verma's personality. After completing her primary education in Indore, she did her BA from Jabalpur and then in 1932, while pursuing her MA in Sanskrit for Allahabad University, two of her poetry collections had already gained prominence. Mahadevi Verma started writing brilliantly at the young age of just 7. Her poetic talent blossomed at this age. She was deeply influenced by Lord Buddha. Her poems also show a strong inclination towards spirituality. She represented her time. She is known as a Chayavadi poetess, and this is because she belonged to that era. The Chayavadi era actually reflects the events of a time when there were conflicts, struggle and movement at all levels: political, social, cultural and economic. This is why the distinctive characteristics of Chayavadi are evident and deeply ingrained in her works. Anguish, pain, love and mystery are prominent themes in her works. Her poem express a longing for union with a transcendental beloved, an expression often veiled in mystery. The experience of pain, a sense of mystery, romantic love and an appreciation of beauty are the pillars upon which her poetry rests. Her poems extensively depict liberal love, the feelings of love towards a transcendental beloved, feminine shyness and the experience of personal and spiritual separation are the diverse dimensions of her romantic love. Her poems also exhibit a unique appreciation of beauty. She considers beauty a means of attaining truth. Mahadevi Verma's aesthetic sensibility is drawn to both nature and human life. A characteristic of Chayavadi poetry is that the poets of this era were exceptionally sensitive. They took the art of poetry very seriously. This is evident in the fact that their works are full of human qualities and energized by sensitivity. They reflect a sense of pride and their compassion extends to all living beings. This has been a hallmark of Mahadevi Verma's work. Love and death too for the entire living world is depicted in her works, along with pain and suffering. The Chayavadi era is also considered the period of the Indian Renaissance. This was a time when there was active struggle at all levels. Women were seeking their liberation, and the country was striving for independence. The flight of liberation in her works is clear, boundless, and eternal. The feeling of love is comprehensively present in Mahadevi Verma's poems and writings. The depth of this feeling of love is so profound in her works that one has to resort to the relationship between the soul and the divine to understand it. Spiritually love, a feeling quite different from and much deeper than worldly love, is what she has poured into her poetry. The perception of the subtle in the gross is a distinctive feature of her aesthetic vision. Although her works are often considered to be primarily focused on anguish, this is not entirely accurate. Her works moves from pain and suffering towards joy, and this is the essence of the poetic journey. A sense of emptiness and a peculiar loneliness are frequently evident in her poems. It is also believed that her personal life influenced her works, but this is not particularly clear. She never lived with her husband as a wife. She was married at the age of 12, but it is also clear that she had no complaints against her husband, nor was there any animosity between them. Mahadevi Verma even suggested that her husband remarry, but he did not, and he remained devoted to her throughout his life, considering her his only wife. It is important to remember here that Mahadevi Verma is also called the modern day Meera. Her love was transcendental, and she was quite detached from worldly affairs. She herself acknowledged that she had no sorrow or lack in her life, but she was distressed by the suffering of others in the worldly realm. Her emotional landscape is rooted in spirituality and humanism. In fact, a glimpse of spirituality is subtly present throughout her entire work. Mahadevi Verma writes that our countless joy may not even take us to the first step of humanity, but even a single tears of ours cannot fall without making life sweeter and more fruitful. When a person has gone through the experience of pain and endured its intense sting, they can understand the suffering of others from the same perspective. It is from here that feelings of empathy and compassion for the suffering of all humanity are born within them. Mahadevi's unique characteristics is that pain culminates in joy. The streams of pain flows ultimately merges into the ocean of bliss. She does not even consider death to be an end or a tragedy. From her perspective, it becomes immortality. We are about to present to you the invaluable works written about Mahadevi Verma in the Mahadevi Abhinandan Granth. It is deeply touching to us that it is written about Mahadevi Verma, that she appears to us in her poetry like a goddess from heaven, and she has a premonition of the loftiness and joy of her life, and she experiences the same joy even in this mortal world. Regarding Mahadevi Verma's works, Shakti Trivedi says that it is a philosophy of optimism and joy, which people have mistakenly perceived as sorrow and melancholy. On many occasions, her suffering is not personal but universal. The edifice of her suffering is built on spiritual and humanistic foundations. Her suffering takes the form of compassion for all living beings. Through her poetry, she instills new hope and joy in the hearts of the suffering. Mahadevi's loneliness and her personal life experiences are often blamed for the pervasive sense of suffering in her poetry. In this context, Bajnath Prasad says that the political circumstances in India were such that the tone of despair naturally and spontaneously emerged in the poetry. The Chayavad era was the period when the upliftment of women began to be discussed. It was a time when women were struggling to gain equal status in society, attempting to break free from their tradition, conventional bonds, and moving towards becoming practical companions to men. Men too began to feel that they should be understood in their trust from. Love is the fundamental theme in her poetry, and it is particularly special because it is a portrayal of feminine emotions from a woman's perspective. She embodies both the modesty and shyness of a woman, as well as the self-awareness of the newly awakened woman of her time. She suffered the pains of separation, yet she does not shy away from the solace of union. Her poetry depicts a love devoid of lust, imbued with a profound sense of sublimity. She chose to portray the sweeter aspect of love. Mahadevi Verma perceived the omnipresent, vast power of the universe in her poetry. She saw beauty throughout the entire cosmos, and experiencing this, she depicted its various forms. Her poetry is a treasure trove of beauty. Images of diverse forms of beauty are scattered throughout her song. It is impossible to fully encompass her perception of beauty. These depictions of beauty are also imbued with a sense of mystery.